Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. My name is Jeff Newman. I'm the host. And today we are joined by Matthew. I'm going to do my best. Kizakadu.
That was
Please.
very close. Keta. So we're getting there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. And so Matthew is the founder and managing partner of New Roots EB5 Fund. And so welcome to the show. And
Thank you.
Matthew, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys are doing over at New Roots.
Yeah. So as you said, I'm one of the co-founders of New Roots EB5 Fund. So what EB5 is basically one of the fastest ways to secure your American residency. So the idea behind it is the government wanted foreign capital to basically be invested into America. And so you invest foreign capital as an H-1B holder, F-1 holder, or an international person. The investment amount right now is $800,000. Each of those investments have to create 10 jobs. So you could think of construction workers, you can think of manufacturing jobs, you can think of startups, private equity. You could think of it as very cheap capital for the fund managers and to create jobs. And then for the investor, they get the benefit of immigrating to the US or being able to expedite the process to get to the green card. And so right now, if you're on H-1B, the wait times are 20 or 30 years. And you could see with the Trump administration, how much pressure they're putting down on the immigrants. And so EB5 has become a really good alternative for people that are looking to secure their residency for themselves or their children. So the petition is good for you, your spouse, and your children under 21.
Awesome. And so Matthew, you're Chicago based. Is your reach limited to Chicago or that's just where you live?
Yeah, so I just live in Chicago, but we do real estate development all over the country. So you could be in Texas, you could be in California. So the way it works is basically there's something called a regional center. And based on that regional center, that's the states that we can be connected to. So for us, we're really predominantly looking at investing in the Southern Sunbelt states. So think Texas, Arizona, Nevada. We currently have a project going on near Dallas. We're developing 55 single family homes around 3,000 square feet. That was our first rural EB5 project. And we're looking to do a deal in Austin, hopefully soon, but that could be maybe 388 acres. So very excited. The potential with EB5 is almost limitless as well, too.
That's great. Question for you, for like a new customer or someone reaching out, who would be the ideal customer profile? And if that has to do with countries too, you're like, hey, here's the top 5 countries that knock on the door. Who should be listening to this?
Yeah. So honestly, so I'm Indian. I'm South Indian. I'm from Kerala. My family's from Kerala as well too. So this is the southern region of India. But predominantly, EB5 investors are Chinese, and then the second market is basically Indian people. And then a third is more like Vietnam, South Korea, and then LATAM, like Latin America, has started to pick up as well too. So for the people that are on H-1B or on F-1 and they're looking for an alternative option, in 2022, the laws changed around EB-5 under the Reform and Integrity Act, which is what authorized EB-5. And it basically said now you can file concurrent status, meaning that if you're an H-1B holder, F-1 holder, you're able to invest the 800,000. So predominantly who we work with is mostly Indians. We haven't been able to tap into the Chinese markets. EB5 is a very trust-heavy game. So for us as a new fund, the way we compete with the bigger funds that are like 3 or 4 times larger than us is word of mouth and reputation. So for us, it's not transactional. We try to, client services are basically, I pick up the phone at 1 a.m., PM, whatever it may be, to basically guide the investor through because they are extremely worried and scared because this is $800,000 is their life savings for the last 25, 30 years. They're liquidating their 401ks. They're selling land over in India, ancestral land. They're borrowing money from friends and family, basically anything and everything to secure that residency for most of the time. It's not even for themselves. It's for their children that are under 21 and they want them to have a secure spot in the US. Actually, something that shed light on this whole predicament of immigration was, I was born in the US. So my parents immigrated from Kerala, but I was born around Chicago and Des Plaines. But one of my buddies was working at Google and he was part of the protests of a Google Cloud CEO. So they did a, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a sit-in protest where 26 software engineers basically just peacefully sat outside of the cloud CEO to basically say, don't support Israel with the, the war and the contracts basically that Google had. And he was a Chinese immigrant basically here from F1 to now H1B. And the cloud CEO fired all 26 of them. The unfortunate part was he was the only one that was on status. So now he was given 60 days to find another job or leave the country. And so in his circumstance, it's just him. But imagine you have a wife, you have kids, you have a home, you have a house, like, or sorry, you have a car, right? You have to liquidate all those things if you can't find a job. So right now with the Trump administration, it's crazy the amount of pressure that's going on. But I'm seeing right in Frisco and Plano, people talking about essentially all this H-1B fraud from Indian people, and it's all misguided. And I honestly am going to fly into Plano and Frisco and talk to city council and inform them that the H-1Bs, the people that they're claiming that are fraud, these are IT staffing companies. IT staffing companies, their predominant job is to find basically talent, H-1B talent, whatever the talent is, and then place them on American employers. So they're basically the intermediary between the employer and the employee, and they're the middleman. And so they will be on their payroll of the IT staffing company, but they're placing them and they're working on the site of the employer, whether it's Walmart.
Yeah, well said, and, hopefully this is a platform to clear the air or clear I see a lot of misinformation on the internet, and when you're a subject matter expert in something, that's a really good way to see if someone, like for example, when politicians or even Elon Musk or figures show up to the scene and have a point of view, it's always interesting to check to say, well, I'm the subject matter expert on this, and then to see if people are have done their homework, speaking the truth, and if not, there's that gap. There's
Yeah, and I feel like there's some people that are just blatantly racist and they just hate, immigrants. Fair enough, like you could have that opinion and, that doesn't bother me. But for the people that are thinking this is actually fraudulent and would, change their opinion if they knew the truth, those are the people I'm trying to reach and make them understand that this is the case.
Yeah. And I'm just checking, you've been about 2 years in the role? Like, tell me a little bit about the history and, like, how you built up to this or how you found.
Yeah, so honestly, I could not say this is by myself. I have amazing people in my life. I have amazing mentors. So my parents were, born in Kerala, came over here, but they worked. My dad was a bus mechanic. My mom worked for McDonald's. Neither of them had a college education. So kind of a very similar immigrant mindset. Basically, education is the number one thing. That's your social mobility. And so for my parents, I had three options, engineer, lawyer, doctor. I wasn't going to be in school for so long. I wasn't going to go law. I didn't like reading. I was good at math and physics. So I was like, all right, electrical engineering it is. And so that's kind of how I stumbled upon that. But it wasn't because I loved it or I was passionate about it. Something that really affected me was when I was 10 or 12, my mom started a business. She quit McDonald's and started a dollar business, a dollar store business. And it failed miserably. But I remember thinking she had the courage to go and do this and start this. And I knew that there's no such thing as job security from an early age. Whether you don't serve the employer anymore, there's job cuts, the economy's bad, your job's on the line. And there's no such thing as loyalty anymore. No one's protecting you out there like your own family. And so that brought me from college. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to make an impact. Then what happened is I studied electrical engineering, worked in a robotics company for a bit, was feeling stagnant. I was living in Chicago, so I hadn't really explored a new city yet. So I really wanted to leave. And then I got the opportunity to work as a software engineer in Dallas, actually. And so as I was a software engineer there, I basically was, working, learning, and then I wanted to kind of prove to myself I can make like well above six figures. And like I've never had basically enough money to feel like, I've done it, right? Like I saw all my buddies in computer engineering, electrical engineering, they were at Google, they were at Facebook making 250, 300 almost out the gate from college. And I could just see like they had so much more opportunity. So then I was like, I want to be able to make that type of money. And so then I basically started talking to a lot of people. And then there was a gentleman in Chicago I talked to him in a networking event. He was very fond of me and he basically curtailed a job for me and brought me in and really believed in me. And so I was really thankful for that opportunity that brought me back to JP Morgan, corporate investment banking. and worked in that for about a year and a half, 2 years. But in 6 months, I was like, oh my God, I'm making this money. This is so amazing. Then it was that, that promise I had to myself when I was 18, like, am I going to start my own company? Am I going to do the things that I set out to do? Like, I'm not going to do it when I have a girlfriend and I have a wife and I have children and I have a house and I have a mortgage. Like, now is the time. And this was around 25. And so then I decided, I'm going to quit. I'm going to take this leap of faith and kind of move forward. And I was done. Right. So that brought me to, my mentor, who is the owner of the law offices of Mary Kennedy in Schaumburg. She's actually very close family friends with my family. And so I came to her and I was like, hey, like, I'm thinking of quitting this job, or I want to leave and I'm done with it. Like, I don't want to work in corporate anymore. And she's like, no, 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 like, stay, like, it's safe. It's a good job. Right. And that's the immigrant mentality, is not risk taking, right? It's more like stability, safety, because think about, like, if you were to lose a job, then you're never able to get another one, or you had to leave the country, right? You don't want to mess with that kind of instability. But for me, I was like, I I really want to do this. And so I came back 2 weeks later and I told her, I'm done. And she was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I think real estate at that time, I started K Squared, which was like a software development company. And we were basically arbitraging, US clients and then selling it overseas and then making that differential. But I didn't really like the business as much. It was like a one and done kind of thing. So I played team sports growing up. I played soccer, basketball, tennis, badminton, like all the sports. And I really like having a team. And I love the idea of camaraderie and, like, we ride the ups together, the downs together. And so real estate is a very relationship heavy business, right? It's, you got your architect, you got your government officials, you got your mortgager, you got your GC, you got your investors. And so it's like you're putting all these pieces together. And I was like, I think this would be really cool. And at that time, I bought like 8 units worth of real estate in Chicago. And so I really liked that whole process. I really liked real estate as a whole. I liked the long term, like, prospects of it, the leverage you gain out of it, the tax benefits, all of that. So I basically bought the real estate to then supplement my income, but then started understanding, like, what can I pursue? And so as she introduced me, she was like, okay, you want to do real estate development? Why don't you introduce me to the real estate developers that I know? So she introduced me to real estate developers in California. One was in Atlanta. He was doing an $80 million deal. It was the Marriott Hotel right outside of the airport. And I met him, and it was a beautiful hotel. And I was like, at that point, I was studying, raising capital is very hard. Like, how did you raise 20, 30, 40 million dollars? At that point, he was like, oh, I basically at the time raised it through EB5. And that was the first time I've heard of it, EB5. And I was like, oh, wow, like, this is very interesting. Like, tell me more about it. And he was the time he was saying, I basically get foreign investors, they invest $500,000 at the time, and I give them 0% interest. So we at least give 1% interest, but on 800,000, but they were getting 500,000 at 0% interest. And he basically said that they're kind of looking just for the benefits of the green card. They're not looking for a lucrative investment, right? And so this is the arbitrage that I was like, oh, wow. But then the unique advantage we had in the market was we had, my co-founder owns an immigration law firm. So now we have a natural lead generation tool almost for people that are interested. And then she has a big name in the community as well too. So word of mouth is very powerful too. And so I was like, I think this is an amazing opportunity. I came back to her and I said, I think we should do this. And she was like, okay, like, what do we need to do? And I was like, I started researching and I was like, we need to go to, like, Invest USA. We need to go to this conference. We need to go to that conference. And these conferences weren't cheap. Like, each conference was almost $3,000, $4,000 for a ticket. And so I went to the conference and I basically started putting the team together. I started picking, like, securities attorney, immigration attorney, business plan writer, economist. And little by little, we formed our team and we put everything together. We got our first project together. And so it was really fun. Like, looking back at it, it was really, really enjoyable. I love working with people. With software, I felt like I was in isolation a little bit, but with New Roots, like, I get to do, like, immigration law. It feels impactful to me. People are so appreciative. I get to educate people on it and I get to help people at the same time. I get to do real estate development. I get to impact so many more lives, right? Like, our project in Dallas area, in Granbury, Texas, which is Pecan Plantation, is creating 200 jobs. The Austin deal could create almost maybe 800, 900 jobs, almost 1,000 jobs. So that level of impact is, for me, very happy. And now I'm, like, learning more. It's stabilized and, like, we have a process. And then I get to work with, like, so Mary's two kids are my best friends, basically, are very close friends. So I knew them in college. We would always be together. We'd party together, whatever it may be. And then now we get to do life together in terms of like, and business is like, it's like, honestly, marriage is here to me. And then, like business partners are like right here where it's like, you do everything together. You travel together, you ride the ups together, the downs together. And I don't know anything more thrilling than to share that experience together throughout life. So long-winded answer, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I really appreciate you sharing all that, being a team sport player and building a team. And I can relate to, doing corporate and then realizing, you gotta, if it's in you, you live one life. If you're gonna do your own business, find your own way, it's really now or never. What did I say? Having family support, that's huge. But also, yeah, like no one's coming to save you. So if you're gonna do it, you gotta do it. But you're not
Yeah.
alone. You have a network, you have
Yeah.
friends, and, yeah, I wanted to ask, maybe we could take this direction into, the 2 buzzwords, AI and crypto Bitcoin, and take this any direction you want. But again, I like to say, hey, it's, March 5th, 2026. So just as a timestamp in history, what we're saying, becomes different 2 years from now, just put in context the moment in time we're in. But the question I had for you was, how are you using AI, seeing AI? Is it disrupting jobs, creating jobs? You got an edge? Like, so just feel free to share whatever you're comfortable about with AI. And then also, we were talking about like Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto, capital controls, just like how that impacts maybe your overseas customers. Just curious, like, again, these are two broad, buzzwords, but they're mega trends and they impact everybody, whether we embrace them or not. So AI, it's either, oh, I lost my job to AI, or I'm creating a startup and creating jobs with AI, or I have an edge because of AI. So it's like, there's definitely many sides to this puzzle. But yeah, I was just curious what how this is impacting you and how you're embracing these.
Yeah. So I'll start with kind of crypto and blockchain because it actually is applicable to EB5. And so right now, there's a lot of countries, for example, India and China, they control the remittance or the capital that's exiting that country. So for China, it's very difficult for us to source investors because the government controls if the money leaves or not. And so if there's no way to get the money into the US, there's no way to do EB5. And recent years they've been more and more strict and there's nothing you could really do unless you're trying to go through Hong Kong and then wire it. But then now USCIS is thinking, is this black money? Is this clean money? Is it not? And right now for India, it's a similar story where there's the RBI or the Royal Bank of India. They have basically a strict, capital outflow policy, and then you have to pay all the remittance taxes, things like this. And so for EB5, it's very interesting to see crypto's come up multiple times of like, can we accept it or not? And no one's really gotten it through, because we need a paper trail of how the money has been accumulated and exactly every single dollar needs to be sourced. And so this is the difficult part for a lot of Indian people or Pakistani people. When they're bringing that capital over, it has to be sourced. And so for what I see even bigger though, I know an EB5 fund manager that's him and his brother actually, and he's one of my mentors as well too, is doing basically is something interesting outside of EB5, but just for private real estate, he's basically getting appraisals for like multifamily properties, let's say $50 million. And then he's putting that appraisal on the blockchain and then selling the equity in tokens basically to the international markets. Think India, think China, think wherever, where if you wanted to access US markets, buy some tokens, buy some, stable coins. It's 1 to 1 and now it converts. And when it appreciates, you get the benefits paid out. It's all written in the contract. So the difficult part with this is the trust factor. So I'm still waiting to see how he executes on it and how the actual raise will go. But there's a lot of people that are starting to create assets in the blockchain and then basically sell it off. And so now you can access world markets. And I think that's amazing because there's a lot of people that don't want to hold their currency. Look at India, look at the rupee, right? I remember 4 or 5 years ago, we were at like maybe 75, 76 rupees to a dollar. Now we're at 85, 90. So it's not stable. And so, if you're backing with the US dollar, investing into US assets, this is a lot more protected, right? And so that's something where I see blockchain is now the new infrastructure layer, especially connecting, different markets together without having government involvement, right? Now, is there pros? Is there cons? Has there been scams in the industry? 100%. But I think any industry, when it's first starting up and it's not regulated yet, there are going to be scams. And I've actively lost money, but it doesn't mean that I'm, so sad or, disappointed in crypto or it's never going to work. I'm not going to be a doomer kind of in it. Like I see how powerful it is, especially as the payments infrastructure layer. And now with agents, that's a very interesting point you brought up early before we started the podcast. Yeah, like that to me is a cool use case. And I would love to see that type of world.
Yeah, I was saying that uh, Bitcoin being the preferred currency of agents, a trustless, viable, global blockchain. The other thing too is the denominator you were talking about, like hyperinflation or the currency. In dollar terms, I look at it through Bitcoin, and we saw like Iran or currency hyperinflated in terms of Bitcoin. And so,
Yeah.
how do you protect your purchasing power, and then how do you take your wealth cross borders, especially in a war zone? And this is the moment in time we're in is Iran, but, Lebanon, Turkey, Venezuela, Argentina, I mean, this is
Yes.
the true, in my point of view, the measuring stick is the 21 million Bitcoin where you're like, how is your local currency doing? You wanna save in something that is, before it hyperinflates, but, no, that's great points, and, yeah, so you were talking about agents. Are you using AI in agents?
Oh, I mean, yeah. So I use AI. Like I'm a hyper user of AI. Like I have Claude Opus and I pay like 150, $200 a month and I max it out in a week basically. And then I have to wait. But the amount that so to me, AI and LLMs and where we're going is the leverage one person can do now is 10x, right? So for software engineers, the difficult thing is now there was a job that was called front end engineering. You were basically designing and then coding the front end part of it using TypeScript or JavaScript. And now you could just take a Figma design, upload it to Vercel by VO, and then all of a sudden it does the entire front end in perfect code, and you just talk to it in complete English, right? So I don't think people are realizing how powerful a tool this is. And I looked at a statistic the other day, and like less than maybe 5% are paid users, and then 10% are like free users. But the potential for this is crazy. This is like, world changing. It's going to be one of the most impactful things in our history that we've ever seen because when railroads came around or electricity came around, like everyone needed more and more of it. And once people understand how much potential there is in these LLMs, knowledge work is going to be gone as we know it. Right. And what that means isn't that jobs are going to be displaced. It's going to be basically now everyone's going to be extremely efficient. So now if you could think of it as like, I'll give an example of like, let's say something to code up, you had a sprint and you needed 5 engineers to complete set amount of points or stories, right? Now one engineer can kind of do that work in almost 1 day, 2 days, right? So now what you're seeing is basically the software industry itself shrink because there was such oversupply of so many kids studying CS, studying computer engineering, and they were just teaching the programming, but they didn't have the mathematical understanding of it. And now with LLMs, now a crappy engineer, software engineer could be a 10x engineer, right? And so what I'm seeing, I'm going to see probably a good shift is now it's going to be back to in-person communication, talking to you, connecting with you, shaking your hand, looking you in the eyes, right? AI is never going to replace that. But knowledge work itself, the operational things, marketing, the creatives, now people are going to be able to do 10x the amount of things. So I'm really excited to see where that goes and how that's helping. And I use AI every day.
Yeah, I just saw the first, job posting for an AI agent. It was a job posting for the agent, and then whomever built it gets to be the interviewer, but then they can bill the company K a month, whatever the number was. And I come from the software CRM world, and there were agents are like if you decrease headcount and you replace it with a smart agent, it's kind of it's a match. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
great.
I don't even want to say replace because it's like you could put them into sales, put them into if they could fit, obviously, and adjust. But yeah, there's going to be a big shift in the skill sets you're going to need. But it's going to be an amazing time for people to start companies now, right? Like now, when you go to VC, I don't need to raise 250,000 or 300,000. Like I could raise 100,000 and pay for the tokens to the agents and start a company. And I don't need a 3-person or 5-person team now. I could be a one man team. And we're probably going to see that a lot because one smart person and maybe an SME could do so much more, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Solopreneurs with yeah, agents are the new org chart. You can have an org chart. You can be a job creator for people, real people, but you can also, just change up and enhance your organization with agents.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say was we're not replacing humans. Like humans will always have to be in the loop depending on what it is. So for me, I'm creating a AI agent essentially called Paralegal, and what we're doing is automating the workflows of paralegals end to end for H1B, for H4, for EAD, for perm, all these different types, and we're actively building it with the law offices of Mary Kennedy. And so what we're seeing is essentially that I'm not replacing paralegals. I don't want that to be, what we're professing. What I'm doing is making paralegals so efficient that instead of having to review 20 petitions in, let's say, an hour, they can review 20 petitions in 5 minutes, right? Like, so now you're able to now spread the team out differently. And we're not trying to replace attorneys or paralegals, or in case of, software engineers as well, too, they're just enhanced. And there's going to be someone that needs to check the code. Someone needs to be technical enough to understand the architecture. They need to check for security flaws. That's always going to be there. So humans won't be completely displaced, but the amount of leverage you're going to create is going to basically create probably the headcount to drop, right? So there's a tweet from Jack Dorsey, I think, that he laid off like 4,000 employees. What is he doing? He's basically replacing them with agents because now the efficiency you gain out of your employees is that much more exponential that you don't need the same amount of.
I'm familiar with that. Yeah, I think it's the largest percentage for an S&P 500 company, 40% in a swoop. And it's for AI or the reasons of AI. But there's also the overhiring during COVID. Hey, this is March of 2026, we're the second half of the decade, but the first half of this decade was crazy with, the
I mean, there was the Mexican cartels, then Iran, then like the plague was going around in the beginning of the year. Like, this year has been crazy, and the
well, this
economy,
year, I'm talking about the
honestly.
first 5 years, from the 2020 to
Oh
2020.
yeah, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so the first half of this decade has been like from a business
crazy.
planning standpoint. So he's like, listen, we overhired, and so it's all about framing too. It's like, okay, did you lose your job to AI or did you enhance your job with AI? Or your job is no longer the right job in the moment of time. Oh, this is a great movie, Up in the Air, George Clooney, classic. And if anyone
Yeah.
gets laid off or changes jobs or, wasn't their choice, I'd recommend watching it because what it does is it frees up people's dreams. Bless you. Where it's like, hey, you actually really wanted to be something else. You actually have that entrepreneurial spirit in you, but for whatever reason, you got comfortable or stuck, or your identity got tied to your role, whatever the story is. But it's one of these things where this is a very interesting decade. We're halfway through it. It's a very interesting year, by the way. Yeah, to your point with the news.
Crazy.
And my thesis is save in Bitcoin and plug it into your business. And if no one's coming to save you, until you get universal basic income, which is I don't know if you heard of Andrew Yang, but he showed
Yeah.
his message. He was like it was 2019 or so, and then the pandemic happened. But yeah, this AI disruption or enhancement of productivity, and maybe there's a gap where while people are in between jobs and trying to figure it out, and reskill, is there a UBI function? And so that's a space I've been looking at too.
That's a very interesting space, and honestly, like, with all the people displaced, I don't know what older people are like. Let's say, like, right now they're saying HVAC or plumbing or the trades are protected. The next frontier that's coming is physical AI. Like, I'm actively looking into how do we gather visual data to then train robots to then basically do the same task as a tradesperson, right? And so right now there's some problems like the hand problem for dexterity, things like that, but the models are getting really good. And, the Facebook former chief scientist has created a visual model that is 90% more efficient than the LLMs right now for visual based tasks. And I think that's all the VC capital is going towards that. And yeah, I do see a circumstance where maybe the next 10, 15 years that we're on UBI or we need to figure out something because you're not producing anymore, but maybe it frees up your creativity, or there might be just heavy deflation, right? Like there's
Right.
so much productivity that we have so much deflation that now instead of something costing $20,000, it costs 500, right? Like these things open up a lot of possibilities. And now with UBI, that could be something that it is, and it doesn't have to tax everyone out of their mind either if deflation is that heavy too, right? So I could see a possible circumstance like that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is another tangent we could go into the Tesla robots, right? So like factory worker robots, autonomous driving. So Is it disrupting trucking and taxi drivers, Uber, autonomous, like the Waymos and I think Tesla itself. I mean, just the company Tesla is disrupting and enhancing. And yeah, again, as we are halfway through this decade, let's end on this. What's your point of view for the year 2030? When you're helping people, you've got long-term relationships, and how do you want to help people bridge the gap to get to the end of this decade?
That's a good question. But when you say help people in terms of like what?
Well, so
They're
there's
kind
all
of
the
like,
volatility in the world. There's all the volatility in the tech space. Again, it's framing, hey, this is a good opportunity, but it's also scary for people. And so you're helping people, you're planning, people in private, like, tell you the real details so you can truly help them. And maybe it's a long-term real estate investment, but the question is like, how do you help somebody navigate the waters where I'm just looking back in the first 5 years of this decade, which was very disruptive for jobs and businesses, the economy, there's health, all these layers. And so the question is, when you're helping someone out, like, what's the kind of overarching like message or vision to be like, hey, like we could, don't worry, there's volatility in the world for sure,
yeah.
chaos, but
I think kind of be like water, be adaptable. This is a crucial inflection point, and you do not want to be on the kind of the older side of this where, oh, don't use AI or I don't believe in this, things like that. I would learn the tool as well as you can and become useful, right? Like whether that's marketing or software engineering or operations, right? Or sales. Use AI because you will destroy your competition. And to be able to compete in this market, if you're not using AI, you'll be left behind. And so I think that's a key point to drive home. And then in terms of, think about now for people starting businesses or for people that are looking for jobs, what is defendable now in a AI market, right? Sales is to me like still in person. I go to conferences, I meet people. You're never going to replace that. That's not going to be replaced. Me and you talking via camera, it's not going to be the same as me and you sitting and, meeting and connecting, things like that. And that's not going to be replaced. So the real world is still there. It's just how do you adapt to it? And you have to really think about that. And then the beauty about real estate is also, yes, it's physical. It's more than 15, 20 years before I think robots start building like the homes and things like that. But even then, gain as many assets as you can because what's going to happen is all this instability. And I feel bad for this generation. I think the most difficult part about, being gun ho for capitalism is they can't even participate in the capitalistic markets. They can't buy homes because they're too expensive. They can't buy cars, so they have to rent. And so I can understand why they don't want, all of what's going on right now in the administration or talking about capitalism, things like that, why they would hate it. They can't even participate in it, right? And so I think something that would be really cool is if we could solve the affordable housing crisis. And I think robots could honestly do that. And there's a way that everyone kind of wins in that circumstance too. They could gain equity, they could build wealth, and then maybe it changes the way we think about, innovation and capitalistic markets in the US too, instead of more socialist.
yeah, well said. I actually, if I could, I have a little point of view on that is, being in expensive cities and, thinking real estate's out of touch for people, right? And I worry about the young people, like where access to property rights is fractions of Bitcoin, where Bitcoin, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin and it is property rights. You can have Satoshis on your mobile wallet. And all of a sudden, if you're in college and you're kind of misguided, now you're a stakeholder and it's appreciating asset and it's global, it's mobile, it's liquid, it's portable. Whereas real estate, it then the accessibility, different states have different, buy-ins. The starter homes in Texas are a little different than Chicago, Manhattan, San Francisco.
100%. Yeah.
And so, but it's like the sooner students get access to property rights, the sooner they're enfranchised, not disenfranchised. And, then they're on the quote unquote ladder. And I do think crypto, Bitcoin, blockchain is like democratizing, a tokenization of assets. So I share that point of view with you as well as I worry about people getting misguided by politicians because they just feel like they're left out. And it doesn't have to be that. So,
And I think that's a great point of like, if real estate's too expensive or different assets are way too expensive, Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is a great way to be in. And like to quote Warren Buffett, timing the market beats timing the market. And so if you see what's going on with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, just buying $50 worth or $100 worth, right? Like we think about 2012. I remember one of my buddies who's, I was really close with, he bought a bunch of coins back then and he sold it when it hit like maybe 1,000 or 2,000. I'm sure he's sad, but it's just timing the market and it's just the discipline of just putting some amount of money away, whether it's $10, $20, $50, it compounds, and putting it into things like cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, you don't know what'll happen to it, right? And it's kind of like something where now you can participate. And that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, no, it's great to talk. Not financial advice, folks. We're just sharing ideas. Matthew, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. So we'll end here. I guess the last question I have is, where can people find you? And everything you say we'll put in the show notes with links. So what is the preferred way to have people reach out to you who watch this and want to learn more?
Yeah, so for New Roots, please reach out to me, Matthew at newrootseb5.com or team at newrootseb5.com. For paralegal, if anyone's interested in the legal tech space or has any connections, I'm just starting go to market basically this month as well too. So that's paralegal. So para and then eagle dot AI, and then you can reach me out there as well too.
Awesome. Matthew, this has been a pleasure. This is awesome. A lot of great information. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Great. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.